Lost, but one of them, Politico says, is like Walz's wide eyes showed his passion and emotional intensity. Can we show that? There is his wide eyes. That humans would widen their eyes to convey that danger is close. What emotion are you getting from that?
Sorry.
Greg Gutfeld lights fuses instead of warming up. And it wasn't a roast when he looked at Tim Walz. The explosion was controlled. The COVID-19 pandemic, policy reversals, and a leadership style that begged, "Is this thing on?" were the governor of Minnesota's worst defeats. With a fuel can in one hand and a smile on his face, Greg went full arsonist.
Now, Walz is weird, but he disguises it under the costume of phony compassion, a fake politician who masks destructive ideas under the guise of empathy. At a 2017 town hall, he implied 10-year-old boys should be able to invade girls' bathrooms because it's all about...
The initial target was the logo. Walz attempted to portray Lincoln, a flannel-clad folk hero, using Wi-Fi. It didn't seem true to Greg. "You're just the Halloween version of a farmer if you stand next to a tractor," he added. The Carhartt outfit was ripped off in a matter of seconds.
Game, since his only attack was that the other guy was weird. Because everyone is weird, the more you get to know them. It's why marriage is a commitment. Over time, both spouses realize we're all bat crazy. But there's weird and there's dangerously insane.
Then the epidemic flashbacks began. Similar to a bloodhound at a feast, Greg jumped right in. What was Walz's explanation for the lockdown? He thought 5-minute updates were Oscar speeches, spoke in riddles, and governed in circles. Tim flopped harder than a salmon in a sauna. Physics turned into vibes, and mantras turned into mantras.
If you ever want to know what the Dems are up to, just listen to what they accuse you of doing. Take the word weird. It was first uttered by a guy named Tim Walz, directed at another guy called J.D. Vance. But turns out, as usual, it's a preemptive projection. For the Dems always call you on stuff that they're about to do or have already done. They accuse you of election interference before they do it. They accuse you of racism before they do it. They accuse you of censorship right before they try to shut you.
Stay home one day and go out, but gently the next. Greg claimed Walz must have been reading fortune cookies for public health advice and utilizing a magic 8-ball. The policy for Tuesday. The future is not definite. Later, try again. Trustworthiness. Absent. Common sense. Not there either.
With Walz, it's hard to even bring him up. He has a resting snitch face. You know? I mean, he forfeited his man card during COVID and the riots. And you're right. And also, at that diner, of course, he left early. So don't you find it weird that for a terrifying threat to democracy that Trump is, not a single interviewer in his history has approached him with trepidation? If anything, they come at him, often with brutal questions about lawsuits, about affairs. Everything is on.
And the rules of business. Don't inquire. Greg slammed the shutdown's hypocrisy like a blackout receipt. Small businesses. Close. Big box stores have opened. Greg claims, apparently, COVID only shops at small businesses. Walz's discussions. Dramatic pauses in fan fiction about the end of the world. Greg laughed and said, "If Tim Walz were your GPS, you would be in a lake, apologizing to a duck."
But whose expertise does he rely upon for his Midwestern takes? Here's Minnesota State Rep Leigh Finke, who wants to train more children's doctors on sex change surgery and puberty blockers. He sponsored the Trans Refuge Bill, which Walz signed, which makes Minnesota a sanctuary state for such butchery.
If you promise trans refuge, then we need to increase the number of people who are offering gender.
There was riots after that. Cities were devastated by fire. Walz blinked. Greg said, "You'd think he was polling his ficus, his goldfish, and a Twitter thread because he waited so long to act." The harm was already done when the National Guard showed there. Greg claims that that's not leadership. That's a loudhailer caretaker duty.
There are other weird things about Walz, of course. He fibs about his military service. He set up a snitch line to narc on citizens for not wearing masks outside. And he's super weird on free speech.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
There's no guarantee. What? I guess his class didn't cover the First Amendment. But if misinformation...
Let's talk about the economy now. Walz's tax schemes. A feast for the senses. Greg said, if you take a shot every time a business leaves Minnesota, you'll be unconscious before lunch. Learning. Even more depressing. The syllabus was removed from a former educator who was in charge of schools like his own. Test results were negative. Greg claims that kids didn't learn maths. They discovered how to reduce expectations.
Wait, you lost because you weren't woke enough? That's like telling Joy Behar she's not eating enough Doritos. That's like Jasmine Crockett saying, I gotta black this up. That's like Bud Light saying, hey, you know what? We could use more Dylan Mulvaney. But even Kamala's not that clueless, and that's saying something. Walz also seemed to doubt the validity of the last election.
Time for a picture. Town halls, rolling up sleeves, and the ferocity of the neighboring parent. Greg ruined it. He's like a temporary instructor who happened to stumble into a campaign. The tours for listening. Endless. The outcome. Nothing. Greg asserts that Walz controls optics, not results. That's fantastic if you're trying out for The Bachelor rather than managing a state.
As a teacher, my number one responsibility in the classroom is the safety, security, and belongingness of every single child in that room. These are children my son's age, a 4th grader, a 10-year-old who just wants to go to the bathroom. And their identity is they are male or female, and they just go in that bathroom and use it. End quote. Sounds so folksy, you know? Belongingness. Yeah, they'll be belonging in therapy with this guy at the...
Greg compared reading Walz briefings to IKEA instructions while in the dark. Long, unclear, and you haven't found a single screw yet. The best feature. It wasn't Greg who exaggerated. It was Walz. With a smile, Greg said, this wasn't even a takedown. A public service announcement was what it was. Tyrants can be survived, but clowns cannot be elected again.
What is with this administration and the spouse swapping of the VP and the president? We saw it before. Like, Dr. Jill didn't kiss Joe like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And now he couldn't wait to get that full embrace. It wasn't a bro hug, it was a yo hug. And he put his wife in the friend zone.
Yes.
Which is always... That must have been a fun car ride home.
Yeah.
Why can't you hug me like her husband? I mean, it's weird.
It is weird. You know, Joey, I think that it's okay to take Walz's picadillos, if you call it, apart, because remember, he broke the seal by calling Vance weird, and we're all weird, including him.
Greg was far from finished. He objected to Walz's fixation on task forces. Tim distributes commissions similarly to how Oprah distributes her blender. A board is given to you. A task force has been assigned to you. They offer you a title that has no meaning. Crime increased dramatically. They boarded up the towns. What about Walz? He acted like it was a TikTok trend, not real life, Greg said cynically.
Ring. I speak of former VP nominee Tim Walz. He joined Beto O'Rourke at a Texas town hall last night, and the estrogen levels were enough to give Chuck Norris menstrual cramps. I wonder, is our strength our diversity?
Our strength is our diversity. We've been talking about this for years as a country of immigrants, and we let them define the issue on immigration. We let them define the issue on DEI, and we let them define what woke is.
The next step was empathy theater. Each speech finished with bureaucratic pudding and started with a dramatic sigh. Greg chuckled. He speaks like a bomb technician translating Shakespeare. It's 90% filler, ambiguous, and wooden. ChatGPT would capture Tim Walz's emotional spectrum if it wrote feelings after binge-watching Hallmark flicks.
I want to see this in slow motion. You'll see Walz extends his hand to his wife. She grabs it. They shake. He pulls her close and then goes in for that non-friction hug, all the while still shaking her hand. I wish there was a word to describe that. Oh, yeah.
Take a shot every time he says robust dialogue or community-based solutions, and you'll be hospitalized by the Q&A, Greg said as he concluded with a drinking game. As a result, it was predicted that while the state burned, there would be more slogans, boards, and brunch gatherings. According to Greg, Walz has a press team, but no trousers. What about the audience? Howling. Because when Gutfeld roasts, he exposes as much as he amuses. And sometimes the only truth Minnesota receives is mockery.